Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, August 28, 2017. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Leaks May.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Pollica.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Piana.
Here.
And Mayor Coulter.
Here, thank you. We have a quorum this evening. The next item of business would be the approval of the agenda. What is council's pleasure on the agenda this evening?
I'd move we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Ooh, close. But Martin and Leaks May. By a nose. Any discussion on the agenda this evening? All right, Marnie.
Council members Leaks May.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Pollica.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. So moving on into the agenda now, the next item is presentations. And the first presentation is always an exciting one to do, and especially this year. Julia Music is going to present the Ferndale 2017 Pride Distribution of Proceeds. Julia, welcome. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys very much for having me here today. This is a very exciting year. This was our 7th year. So last year when I came and distributed grants, we got to say we have now given away over $100,000, and that was a big mark after 6 years. Today we will give away $25,000. So we are really growing quickly. As you know, Pride was bigger and better than it's ever been this year. We had more vendors than ever. We had more corporate sponsorship than ever. We had more attendees than ever. And we had the least amount of rain ever, which was really fantastic. And next year, we've already started planning. If anyone saw me out in the middle of the street with a tape measure last week with Sean, we've measured the street. We know exactly how many vendors we can get in. We know where our children's area is going to go. So we're starting 2018 already. But today I get to give away money, which is the fun part, right? So there are checks here for our grant recipients. The way we have chosen our grant recipients is they have to be inside the city of Ferndale and give back to the LGBT community in some way. So Ferndale Community Foundation is our first recipient, and the people who receive that money as their people are up as council members. So Dan and Greg, who are the chair and the treasurer of Community Foundation. Thank you so much for all your work and promotion of Pride. And Greg, thank you for the countless hours at my kitchen table and your mom's kitchen table getting this event done, because he does all of the treasury work as a volunteer. Our grant recipients today, many are here. First recipient is Transgender Michigan, so Rachel and Susan. Transgender Michigan works with the transgender community, bringing support, awareness, and has been a long-time friend of Ferndale Pride.
She's happy to get a check.
Yeah, can we do a group photo at the end, too? Thank you.
So why don't we have you do this? Come on up this way, and then we'll end up doing a group photo up here, I'm guessing. So why don't you ladies come? Yeah, just keep coming up closer to this, right? Yeah. I think we're going to have a big shot in a minute.
Our next recipient is Matrix Mac Health, and Monica, are you here as the representative? Monica represents Matrix Mac Health, but she is also our volunteer coordinator, which means she donates over 100 hours of her time volunteering to Ferndale Pride as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Woo.
Our next recipient is Gender Identity Network. So Michelle and Jerry work hard to do a lot within the gender community, and they are putting on some of the meals that we get for Thanksgiving and Christmas time. They have great potlucks that bring the transgender community together and give them a space. They do groups and so many things, support groups, Yes, Transgender Day of Empowerment, Transgender Day of Remembrance, Artivism, and so many other things. So thank you.
Woo. Thank you.
And last but not least, I just got a call from Susan. She left Wixom. Susan S. Palmer is the ED at Affirmation. She left Wixom at 5:50 and was only in Southfield, and the storm is really bad. So she could not get off 696 to even get here. So she apologizes and feels horrible. She even had her kids in the car. So excuse them, please, for not being here. Thank you very much to all our recipients. Please enjoy your money. Spend it wisely.
So, Julia, why don't you come up and join the group? Dan and Greg, if you want to join them as well, just to have some...
And then if there are people from the Pride Committee who are here, if you want to come up and join us for the picture.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be great.
I should say, this is our fundraising chair, Drew Shankles. Last year he said to me, I want to do more. He raised more money than any other fundraising chair that we've ever had, and Alyssa Atkinson was pretty hard to beat. We had one event that he brought in one person that raised more money than the entire event had previously raised. So he's done an amazing job. He's a great asset to our community.
Bunch together, maybe. Bunch together.
Well, Kira's the photographer.
It's like a pyramid.
All right.
Everybody. Excellent.
June 2nd, 2018 is Ferndale.
I'm already working on the weather. All right. Robin, I don't know how you're going to top that, but Robin, Beautification Award presentation is next. Oh, you do it? Yep, both of you together. Come on up and tell us who are receiving Beautification Awards this month.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And yes, it is going to be impossible to top that, only because I'm not giving away a lot of checks. In fact, I'm not giving away any checks. But we want to acknowledge some folks that have done really well in helping to beautify our city here in Ferndale. The first house that we're looking at is in the northwest quadrant, and it is 830 West Oak Ridge. And if Scott Everhart or Billy Houghton are here, we'd love to have you come up. Are you here? Oh. The house was built in 1931. It's a beautiful red brick Tudor, and we just thought they just have a lovely, simple, clean, traditional setting there on Oak Ridge, and thought it deserved an award for this particular month. So thank you to them.
And I'm jealous of the lawn. It's been so dry.
It is amazing,
It's so
yes.
dry this year.
The next house is in the southwest quadrant, and it is 1347 West Marshall. Now, is Florence Dallow or Tracy Snell here?
Yeah.
Awesome. Come on up.
That's beautiful.
This little house is just as cute as a button. Over on the southwest side, unfortunately, we need to give a little love to that area and get some of the folks over there to join us in helping to beautify the community. But this house really stood out. And I want you to know, this photo was actually taken a month and a half ago. And when I went back to take another one just so it's updated, it looked the same. And that's really good, considering we've had a really, dry period at times, and people sometimes toward the end of the summer, they just sort of let it go, and, it's like over. But in this case, it's fabulous. The red begonias and the red salvia popping against that little aqua blue house is gorgeous. And so I just think it's a great little addition for that side of town. It was built in 1942. It's a 3-bedroom bungalow, and you two have done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known you would have taken a picture. I would have pulled the blinds down so you don't see our door.
I was wondering what that was.
Well, truth be known, I try not to peep in windows. I just take pictures of houses.
That's beautiful.
Awesome.
Thank you
Very,
very much.
so
Very
much.
nice. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
And keep up the good work. We'll have to come over there and do a little missionary work with the rest of the residences over there. The next house is in the northeast quadrant, and if John and Rebecca Nettle are here.
Wow.
Very good. Awesome. Now, I will have to say, being the horticulture person I am, I just fell in love with all of the beautiful rock gardens around this house. You all have done a lovely job adding color to that area. It was built in 1942, three-bedroom cottage there, and it looks awesome. Any words from you two? How long have you been there?
23 years.
Wow. Took you that long to haul all those rocks in like that?
The second time we got an award in 23 years.
About time, right?
Who has the
Thank you
green?
so
Which
much.
one of you has the green thumb? Ah, you do.
He's wearing a nice green shirt. Very good. Excellent. Thank you so much. The next house that we are recognizing is in the southeast quadrant, and it is 253 East Webster. And I don't know if Sarah McKay or Farshud Kayad are here. They will be receiving their plaque from us later, but I just wanted to point out this beautiful little craftsman-style bungalow. It is so pristine and clean. We love the way the red maple in the front bounces off that chartreuse green foliage at its base. It's just a wonderful, clean, beautiful design, and we thought it was very much worthy of the award.
I'd just like to hear how you describe them.
I was going to say the same thing.
Well, I sort of do that for a living, in a way, with flowers. So it just translates over to the landscape. And then we just lost. There we go. The commercial award winner this particular month is the Axel Brewing and Livernois Tap Complex, we'll call it. Down on Livernois is Dan Riley in the audience. Dan is the president of the business there, and they did a phenomenal job taking the former Diamond Wheel Industry building and changing it into this beautiful facility. The original building was built back in 1962, and they still kept the clean lines that were present in the building, but they've certainly cleaned it up even more and did a beautiful job with the landscaping, the lighting. It's just fabulous. And if I can say so, they have a top-notch IPA there, too. And it's within walking distance of my house, which is awesome. The next thing that we would like to point out is the block beautification nominations will be due by September 19th. So if you are aware of a particular block in Ferndale that has a phenomenally beautiful area there, give them a nod. Nominate them on our Facebook page, or you can also do that through the local government agencies with the, DPW and here in the offices. For those of you who do follow us on Facebook, thanks so much. We're already over 1,000 likes, so that's amazing. We love that a lot. So keep this date in mind. Also, Bootification will be coming up soon. For those of you who are really into the Halloween decorations, our nominations need to be to us by October 17th. And trust me, it's a lot of fun going around and checking out everybody's homes and yards when we select this particular award. So keep that in mind. And then finally, save the date, September 21st. The Beautification Commission will be hosting a free presentation at the Kulik Center called Putting Your Garden to Bed. In other words, getting your yard and garden ready for wintertime. And the person that will be presenting this program is Miss Jan Coppola Bills of Two Women and a Hoe. And I just love saying that title. And she's going to be teaching us how to put our gardens to bed. She will also be there, for those of you who are not aware of it, she has a book that she is promoting, and she will be able to sign those. I know I'm going to be bringing my copy for her to put her Hancock on. And then it will be a lovely presentation. Again, 6:30. It'll probably only run about an hour unless we can get the folks over at the Kulik to let us stay a little longer. And I believe that is it. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. And thanks to all the winners. Nice job. Right. Our final presentation is not nearly as happy. It's bittersweet for us. April, do you want to introduce?
I do. Today we say a final goodbye to Jenny Campos, who is our Director of Human Resources. She has been here almost 6 years. She hit 5.5 years and has unfortunately taken a position somewhere else, and somebody else is going to get her talent. So we wanted to show our appreciation for her time and her energy that she put into this organization and how much we are going to miss her on our team, and wish her the very best. And we're very sad to see her go, but very excited for her new endeavors. So I believe we have a proclamation of appreciation for her.
We
so
do.
We're going to have you come forward and see if we can make you cry. That's our goal every time.
In fact, since she's coming up, how about I'll read it up here. Come on all the way up. Can you, is that? Yep, that works. So, Mayor Dave Coulter, on behalf of the Ferndale City Council, extends its appreciation to Jenny Campos for her dedicated service to the as Human Resource Director. Jenny joined the City of Ferndale in January 2012 and established the first City Human Resources Department as its director. She brought support to our management team through assistance in navigating employee issues, saving over $100,000 a year in labor attorney costs while providing growth, development, and a safe place for employees to bring concerns and change. Jenny established the My Life Health Center and began utilizing wellness initiatives to help control healthcare costs, and has been a significant and passionate champion for all of our employees. Jenny's a credit to our community, and it's with heartfelt appreciation and just a little sorrow that we celebrate your achievement. So thank you very much. Here you go.
Is that, again, she is a huge champion for the city of Ferndale, so we stalked her Facebook page, and we pulled off some very cool pictures of her with our team and our staff of how much she really did really champion our employees. So here's a little bit of something you can hang onto your wall of all of the cool stuff that you did with our organization, so you will be missed. Oh. That would be great. All right.
It's really been a pleasure and an honor to serve this community. Certainly we've had our challenges, but definitely working with April, and we just have an amazing team, and I feel very fortunate to have been able to work alongside the people who've been here pretty much about the same time, all the way through our newest hire in the audience here tonight. So I appreciate all of the support of the community to all of our employee-related events and endeavors, and certainly look forward to continuing to help the community in my new role. So thank you.
All right. So that's enough of us talking. Now it's your opportunity to talk. If you're here in the audience and you would like to address council on any issue that's not on the agenda, because you can speak to that when we get to that portion of the agenda. But if you'd like to come up and speak to council and any issue that you'd like, please do so. Just come up to the podium and state your name and your address, and 3 minutes is yours to share your thoughts. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address council during call to audience this evening? The shy group tonight. Nope. don't have to. All right, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda are items that council considers routine, and we enact them in one motion, unless someone from council pulls one of the items. But let me read the consent agenda items for you now. Item A is the approval of the regular and special meeting minutes of August the 10th, 2017. Item B is the adoption of a resolution encouraging new anti-corruption laws for politicians, lobbyists, and outside groups such as super PACs. Item C is the adoption of a resolution authorizing council travel for council members Leaks May and Mayor Pro Tem Piana to attend the MML convention September 12th to the 15th of this year in Holland, Michigan. Item D is the approval of the budget amendment for $13,500 to fund the 2017 pedestrian and bicycle facilities assessment proposal for fiscal year 17-18 to be paid out of the account mentioned in the agenda. Item E is the approval of the 1244 Paxton Wilson Park Village Public Utility Easement Agreement. Item F is the approval of the one-year agreements to use the city's southwest storage yard as a transfer site for leaves by the cities of Oak Park, Pleasant Ridge, Huntington Woods, and Lathrop Village, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign said agreement. Item G is the approval to renew Ferndale's 8 Mile Boulevard Association membership for the fiscal year 17-18, ending June 30th, 2018, to be paid for with the available allocated funds for this purpose in the account so noted. Item H is the approval of Amendment 8 to Council's Rules of Procedure, Section 2, Meeting Procedure, to add discussion items immediately after the regular agenda and preceding call to council, as noticed at the August 14, 2017 council meeting. And finally, item I is the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the city manager's office and subject to the review of the council finance committee. What is council's pleasure on the consent agenda this evening?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
I would like to
Support. Okay, moved by Leaks May and supported by Martin. Now, discussion.
I would like to read the resolution for our consent agenda item B. So council was approached by a resident named Emily Witeka, who is a member of Represent Us Metro Detroit, which is
you? I think she's here.
Oh, thank you. If you want to come up and speak, you can, but let me do the introduction and then I'll read it, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit that is seeking to end corruption in government, particularly as it relates to campaign finance. Other cities that we know are passing this resolution, but I know that our council and our city is very supportive of anti-corruption, but also an open government and providing transparency. And so I think this resolution falls within the values of our community. And if you wanted to come up, Emily, to say anything else, please do so.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
So I just want to thank you all for discussing this evening, and thank you, Pro Tem Piana, for sponsoring the resolution for us. I guess just very brief background about what we are. We're the Represent Us, a local chapter for Metro Detroit. And basically our movement is to try to end corruption, or at least fight it in American politics, especially as it relates to campaign finance. And our contribution to that fight is building up momentum by passing these resolutions in our home cities. We already have Pleasant Ridge and Southfield that pass similar languages, and we're hoping that Ferndale joins us in the fight. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and read the resolution. This is a resolution to establish as a position of Ferndale that new anti-corruption laws for politicians, lobbyists, and outside groups such as super PACs are necessary in order to protect and promote First Amendment free speech rights of all citizens regardless of wealth, and to restore ordinary Americans as the most important stakeholders in government instead of major donors. Limits on contributions to political candidates are justified by the need to reduce corruption and the appearance of corruption as outlined in Buckley versus Vallejo from 1976, and contributions to candidates and political spending on their behalf from lobbyists and super PACs present a special risk of corruption. And the Supreme Court held a Nevada Commission on Ethics versus Kerrigan in 2011 that restrictions on official actions taken by legislators in situations in which their independence of judgment is questioned do not constitute restrictions on the First Amendment's free speech rights of legislators, and closing the revolving door where elected representatives and senior staff sell off their legislative power for high-paying jobs is important to ensure that government employees are not influenced in the performance of public duties by the thought of later reaping a benefit from a private individual, which is Brown versus District of Columbia Board of Zoning from 1980. Full transparency of all political money is necessary for the growth of an educated and informed electorate, and with nearly $6 billion spent in the 2012 elections, where the majority came from big special interest donors, politicians are dependent on a tiny percentage of the population to fundraise their claims, while ordinary voters have less influence. And federal agencies such as the Federal Election Commission routinely fail to enforce the anti-corruption rules that already exist. Now, therefore, it be resolved that this is the position of Ferndale, Oakland County, State of Michigan, that new anti-corruption laws must be passed by Congress, including legislation to prohibit politicians from taking campaign money from industries they regulate, put limits on unregulated super PACs and other groups, increase transparency for campaign funding, stop elected representatives and senior staff from negotiating jobs while in office, and bar them from lobbying activity for 5 years once they leave, empower all voters through a $100 tax rebate to contribute to candidates they support, and strengthen federal agencies and House Senate Ethics Committee to enforce the rules against politicians and special interests that break campaign finance law. So further it be resolved that Ferndale hereby includes in its 2017 legislative agenda support for efforts to pass its own anti-corruption legislation, and respectfully urges the Michigan congressional delegation to support and introduce anti-corruption legislation to the House and Senate addressing the issues herein described.
And we can give you that copy once it's adopted. So we'll pass that down to the clerk. That's great. Any other discussion on the consent agenda this evening? All right, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Leaks May?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. And if you'd like to pick that up from Marnie, that would be fine. Now moving on to the regular agenda. Item A is the consideration to appoint Nathan Martin to the Ferndale DDA for a partial term ending December 31st, 2018. Is Nathan here? I don't know that he's here. I don't think so. All right. Nathan is not here with us, but Council, I'll introduce this item because the way the DDA appointments work is it's a mayoral appointment with the approval of Council. And I had a chance to talk to Nathan briefly, and he's been recommended by the executive committee of the DDA. I know April has had interactions with him as well. His resume is there. Most prominently, he's the co-owner of Ink Addict in Ferndale, a very successful and popular business here in town. Did you say his co-owner, his partner, is also on the chamber? So they didn't just open a business in Ferndale. They got very involved, and this is Nathan's opportunity to get even more involved. So,
I'm sorry, where do you go to college?
He happened to go to Michigan State.
Yes, he did.
That was bonus points, total bonus points for that, but that's not why I wanted to appoint him.
I'm just pointing it out.
All right. Are there any questions about the appointment of Nathan? All right, a motion would be in order.
I would move that we confirm the appointment of Nathan Martin to the Ferndale Downtown Development Authority for a partial term ending December 31st, 2018.
Support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Polika. Now, any final discussion? Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Leaks May?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That appointment is adopted. Item B is a consideration to appoint Michael Stederman to the Ferndale Board of Review for a term ending December 31st, 2019. Is Michael here with us this evening? Nope. Who wants to introduce this item? I forget who's the liaison to the Board of Review. But essentially, you have the application in your packet. And I don't know.
Where do you go to college?
We got a trend going this evening. Another Spartan.
Yes, he did in Michigan State.
So there's nothing else to ask, right?
No, I'm
Yeah.
good. Well, he's got a great resume. I appreciate his willingness to serve. Very diverse background, including a master's degree in teaching, and he graduated from James Madison at MSU. So I fully support his appointment. He's also owned and landlorded several houses in the city.
All right. So do you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move to confirm the appointment of Michael Stedman to the Ferndale Board of Review for a term ending December 31st, 2019.
Support.
All right. Moved by Martin, supported by Polika. Any further discussion or questions? All right. Hearing none. Marnie, call the roll.
Councilmembers Piana,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That appointment is adopted. Moving on to our third and final regular agenda item is the consideration of a revised purchase agreement for 205 and 235 Livernois. And Jordan, you can introduce that item.
Absolutely. Good evening, Mayor, Council. As the Mayor said, so this item is may look familiar to you at first glance, and you'd be forgiven for that familiarity. So we have the proposed developer and purchaser in the audience, Mr. Paul Motley, and his architect, Ralph Nunez, in the audience today. Just some brief background on this one. If you remember, back in February of this year, we issued a conditional, or Council approved a conditional purchase agreement for both 205 and 235 Livernois. City-owned properties, which are currently vacant, for a total of about $106,000. That purchase agreement was contingent on developing a specific mixed-use concept, which the developer went and vetted. And while I won't steal all his thunder, he's up here to kind of talk details behind that. Essentially, ran into snags in terms of feasibility, trying to meet parking requirements, etc. Long story short, they looked at an alternative concept that involved senior housing that they brought to Planning Commission on July 5th. And based on the feedback there and staff questioning of the project, we essentially charged them with providing specific amounts of feedback in terms of, the operators they were working with, the design model, what the massing would look like, as well as assurances that they could actually build this project if we were to move forward. So what staff has put forward to you tonight is that preliminary massing to look at an urban format, a mixed-use, gateway-level design project that would go on Livernois, that would be mixed use with commercial space on the first floor. It would fit in with the urban fabric of where we're trying to take Livernois, but it would have this senior housing use above it. And essentially what you would have here is a very similar arrangement to the purchase agreements you originally approved. So you would have essentially a reverter clause in there that would give the developer, and I'm actually going to ask, after feedback with City Attorney Dan Christ, to modify item 4 to change the due diligence period to 90 days, within which they would have to get their site plan approval. And they would have, from the date of closing, 2 years to get their approvals, get all their building permits, and construct and get a certificate of occupancy. If they failed to do that within those 2 years, the reverter clause could be exercised by City Council, which essentially would revert the land back to the city ownership. So that's the overview here. But I'm here obviously to take any questions that you have. You did have the materials in your packet for that preliminary massing, and the developer is here also to speak on his behalf on the project.
So just to be clear, in item 4, the purchaser due diligence investigation, so you're proposing that it should say if such notice is provided to seller within 90 days of the date of the agreement?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay.
We felt that as staff and in consultation with Dan, that was a reasonable amount of time to allow for the back and forth of getting on the agenda, answering the different feedback, getting your application in, and just making sure that you can make those meeting times in a reasonable amount of time.
Through the chair, the expectation would be that the developer would close after that due diligence period. And so since the proposed utilization requires special land use approval, there would need to be reviews both at the Planning Commission and at Council with respect to the contemplated use that is set forth in this in the development material attached to the document.
Okay. And this has been to Planning Commission. This current concept has been to the Planning Commission, correct?
That's right. It went on July 5th there.
All right. And what was the summary of that discussion?
The summary of that discussion really kind of hinged, and Councilman Martin, if I miss anything, obviously, please feel free to fill in the gaps.
Keep you honest. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. So essentially it focused on, one, the urban format, making sure that this was a gateway caliber design, because this is right at 8 in Livernois at the entrance to an important corridor, but also confidence in the actual plan. You know, were the operators that they're working with, and again, the developer can speak to this a little bit, you know, you're building a very specific use. So are the senior housing operators that you're talking to, are they involved in the site planning and the layout of the building? Is it going to be conducive to their operations? And so making sure there was confidence in that, making sure that the street front was not, to be crass, you know, dead space, making sure that the space was activated and it contributed to an urban street front. And then also any variances that were going to be required were spelled out, you know, in terms of any deviations that might be required from ordinance. So, and Dan, if I missed anything there, but those were the major cruxes that we recalled from the discussion.
That's correct.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, Dan
But,
Martin, and
but
then
again,
Dan Christ. Yes.
in addition to the Plan Commission, the contemplated development plan does contemplate a variance, so that would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals too. So that is the basis for staff's recommendation for an additional due diligence period for the proposed purchaser to be able to properly vet whether or not those approvals are likely to have happened.
And the variance is because
Height.
is required because height.
Right.
A height variance.
Proposed height variance in their summary document.
Right, and so the developer would have really two options, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan Christ this time, but essentially the options would be go for variance to the BZA or go at this with a planned unit development, similar to what happened at the Taft site for north of Garbett Park there.
Okay. Did the original development concept require a variance as well?
I believe so, yes.
Trying to remember. Okay. I don't remember. Okay. All right.
So let me, if I may,
Question,
through
yeah.
the chair, I have a question, and then maybe it's for the developer to answer. So you recounted quite well some of the issues that were brought up around this. You know, one of which was that is there a partner that runs a senior living? And I don't see in any of the documentation that all of our requests were met. Is that true, or am I missing it?
Well, what we did not get from the developer, and Mr. Motley can speak to that, was sort of the specific vendors that they were talking to. Only that, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that developments, before they're finalized, are sensitive in nature, and so the assurance that staff pushed for when we got that pushback was, are they being involved in the planning and the massing? So whoever you end up picking, well, one, do they have experience in this use, and two, are they involved in the layout of the project to make sure that when you build this, that it can feasibly attract that kind of tenant if that's who you're building it for? And we felt confident after those conversations that that was the case. But I may invite Mr. Motley, if it would please counsel, to just kind of speak to that in detail.
Mayor, Council, good evening. My name is Paul Motley. I am the developer for the proposed site. To quickly answer the question with regards to the operator, as staff said, this is something that's very sensitive in nature. Without commitments and site control and things of the sort, you don't really have a deal in place. So from a credibility standpoint, you don't really have anything, and all the conversations at best will be hypothetical. To that end, we have spoken with several credible and reputable operators. This would be something that would happen later on down the line, and what we would hope to have commitments by the time we get to site plan and special land uses and things of the sort. But, it's not operating in good faith, number one, from a negotiation standpoint in terms of how these things would be decided from an equity position and things of the sort, to bring them up into, discussion at this point in a public forum, no less. So it's for that reason why there has not been a more detailed explanation with regards to that. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
do have some questions. So help me understand a little bit more about the original concept, which was just not senior living housing, but a regular housing project. What was it about that concept that didn't work in that site?
Well, this one, again, I'll probably yield to the architect on that for details.
Okay.
Essentially, it sort of hinged around sort of when you factor in meeting the different zoning and building requirements, the economics of putting together a project that works in terms of getting the right number of units to make the pro forma balance out. There were some challenges there. I would yield to the architect to kind of get into the details.
Good evening, council member, mayor. My name is Ralph Nunez. I was the original planner, and just a correction, I'm a landscape architect, urban designer, not the architect. I was here several years ago, about 2.5 years ago, with that firm that I was in partnership with was Design Team Plus. At that time, my ex-partner presented concept as far as there were 3 individual buildings proposed for this. These were 1- and 2-bedroom units. The first floor of those units, partial first floor of those units, was a commercial use, residential above. And because of the litigation that impended as far as the 2.5 years, economics had changed. At that time, we would have been the first PUD coming in through Pleasant to Ferndale. And what had happened is during that 2.5 years time frame, Paul had gone through talking to other architects, talking to construction companies, and it just economically was unfeasible. As it was mentioned, the parking requirements based on the current zoning ordinance would have required an underground parking structure, which at $15,000 to $20,000 a space rendered it really unattainable. So during the time frame after the lawsuit, Paul came.
But
yes, sir.
I mean, our parking requirements have been the same for years. They've been well known. Was that not known when you put that original proposal together?
There was some difficulties with that plan, and that's one of the reasons why we're not presenting that plan. As far as there were some calculation errors on the math on that plan from the preliminary. So when you look at it and we're coming back, it's like this isn't the right number. So to make it achievable. The other thing is just the economics. To build 3 separate buildings with 3 separate elevators, again, just the cost is tremendous. So when we started to look at it after 2.5 years, one of the things is that can we do it with the regular ordinance? Can we go back and look at use, as well as things have changed in the city? You've got several projects now projects that have gone underway under PUDs. You've got a number of residential projects that are on the boards right now and under construction. And so we started looking at just the market. And so senior housing is definitely on the increase as we're all getting older in the population. And so we started looking at the ordinance and that we can meet the parking requirements for the assisted living. One of the things that personally, a month ago, whenever we came to Planning Commission, my father-in-law is unfortunately 81 going on 2. We had first priority right now for his care was a memory care facility. And the critical situation for my mother-in-law was how close can he stay within the community that close to her. She's still living at home, and we found 2. One was assisted living, one's over on 13 Mile. Fortunately for us, he's able to go, and she visits him 3 times a day, and it's close to my family as well. So one of the things that we looked at was the demographics in Ferndale, that individuals, there is definitely a need for senior housing, assisted housing. And so there are people that have lived here most of their lives or all of their lives and basically need care, and this would be a facility that would allow for that to happen. As far as expertise...
If I may to clarify, sure. Though, the care that you're providing, as I recall from the Planning Commission, there's a floor for memory care, but the rest was assisted living. So there comes a point when the care becomes too intense for this facility to handle, correct?
The way the memory care facility works is that once they're there, they stay there till the very end, as far as on that. That's one of the things that I've learned over the last month dealing with my father-in-law. As far as experience-wise, my 40 years as far as planner and urban designer, landscape architect, I've worked on about 34 facilities for about 4 or 5 of the major companies: Sunrise Assisted Living, Beztech, which is All Seasons, American House. There's a couple independent ones that we've worked with. There's a group out of Bickford Cottages out of St. Louis as far as planning and landscape architecture. When we came to the Planning Commission meeting, we brought in, or after that meeting, we brought in an architect that I've worked with previously, Marty Smith from Sigla Tumala. They have worked on the Walton Woods on as far as at 13 and Woodward Avenue. They've also worked on one of the All Seasons that have also been constructed for Beztech companies. They've worked with a number of the vendors, and so it was really crucial to have an architect that had the knowledge of the interior of the facility, the room sizes, the needs for the staff, support groups, the kitchens, and how those things work. So we brought Marty's group in as far as the architect. Dana Rosenthal, who was present at the Planning Commission meeting, is continuing on as more of the design overall architect as far as the building skin of it. We had a great meeting with the Planning Commission meeting. I'm sorry, Mayor.
I'm not sure what question you're answering anymore.
Okay. Sorry, I was talking about qualifications.
No, it was the intensity of care that we provide.
I think he asked, his question was about the intensity of care.
Yes, you would have assisted living as far as on basically, you would have this on the first floor, you would have 25 or 2,100 square feet of commercial space. The rest of the first floor space is used for kitchen and activity rooms. The second, third floor, as far as on this, would be for assisted living, and the top floor would be for memory care.
So to get to my point, the memory care, if I heard you correctly, once you're there, you can stay there to the end.
That's correct.
The assisted living, though, there's a limit to the level of care that can be provided. At some point, a resident may deteriorate physically that they need more intensive care and housing than assisted living can provide. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The other thing is that the assisted living, because of the parking requirements, there would not be permitted as far as for them to have a private vehicle. There would be a shuttle for them as far as that would get them to and from shopping or where they would want to go.
And tell me a little bit more about what you envision for the first floor again.
First floor, as far as on the building, closest to the south side, closest to the garage or the gas station, would be 2,100 square foot of commercial space. One of the things from talking to Planning Commission was we elevated the whole first floor as far as 14-foot high ceilings so that it would allow for access for emergency vehicles, medical vehicles, as well as garbage trucks to go to the back of the facility. And so that raised the entire first floor high, which is great for commercial space. So the commercial space would be on there. You have kind of the pass-through underneath it, and then the northern portion of it would be kind of their living room, their dining room, those activity rooms that have glass windows so that you have a view in and view out.
May I follow up on a question on that? What type of retail would go into that space for the 2,100 square feet? What type of compatible business would you be seeking to put there?
Number one, it could be maintenance, or not maintenance, but management of the facility. So a management office, we were talking about the possibility of having a room that could be for a community room, and or could be retail, SARS, hairdressers, beauticians space along that line as well.
Okay, and what is the average age of the tenants? Do you have an average age? What?
It's basically depends on the needs. The facility my father-in-law is right now, there's a gentleman who's 53 years old, and then there's some that are he's 81, and some that are older at that time frame. Usually somewhere in the 75 plus range is what you typically have.
And can you talk about the price range? It says you're going to be market rate, but $2,500 to $5,000. That's a really big jump. So what would be market rate for Ferndale?
It's basically, those numbers were the national average as far as assisted living prices, as far as what they range in. It based on what we've found is that it is based on the individual care, meal packages, assistance that they need as far as on a daily basis. So it's kind of an a la carte type of a situation.
And would your proposal down the road look for any incentives from the city to make this project work? Are you anticipating any of that now?
Outside of variances,
Other comments or questions?
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about? I've had a grandmother go from the good side of assisted living to the bad side of assisted living. That's how the seniors talk about it. And then had to be kicked out because her dementia, she can no longer stay there. So, can you talk a little bit about how often, like, the seniors want to leave? I've seen a lot of senior assisted living centers built around parking lots in a non-walkable area. And I was just wondering, do seniors get out and walk about at these assisted living units? Because either you live there and then you get shuttled to everywhere else. And so one of my concerns with this project is its proximity, and it's in a great neighborhood. And there's lots of, great streets to walk around just to get your good walk-in, but it's really far from amenities.
Right.
For any senior, from a pharmacy or a grocery store. And not that we have a lot of, developable land in our downtown. I'm just concerned about the location of your facility and compared to what we're trying to build for some of our seniors. There still would be some sort of isolation, even though it's a mile away from our downtown. Does that make sense?
As you stated, most of the facilities that you're talking about, as far as the pharmaceutical stores and the grocery stores and some of the doctor's offices, are up on Livernois at 9 Mile. We've kind of looked at that. As far as walkability, if you're in the assisted living portion of it, you're not enclosed into that space. You are allowed to venture out with your family or with your individuals going from there. They do have the assistance of the van as far as for longer journeys, as far as to be able to do that. The memory care, basically, they are basically locked in the facility. They don't want them venturing out, and part of the top floor will be a memory garden, as far as so that they do have a space that they can get outside, fresh air in the sun.
Just to be clear, though, there's certainly plenty of drugstores at 9 and Livernois, but there's an urgent care and a podiatrist. There's no primary care, no specialty, no.
Yes, we know that. We looked at hospitals. Everything is one of the things that you start looking at as far as the facility and where everything's at.
St. John's Providence is about 4.5 miles away. Right there at 9.
Other comments or questions? I guess I want to make this comment. I don't know how to articulate it, so I'm just going to. I was more excited about the first project, and I think it's because this is an area, and I'm going to look at Jordan and staff maybe for this as well, or council, but this is an area of Woodward that we've had some very specific development. Livernois, excuse me. This is this is a portion of Livernois that we've had some very specific vision for. And I think we all envision it as being a street that has been activated and eclectic, and we envision shops and bakeries and such there. I am a huge believer that Ferndale needs more senior housing. this feels like an awkward spot for it for me. And so then what becomes most important is that first level of retail or commercial, because that is the portion that could potentially be activated. But what I hear you saying is that that could actually really be not what I would consider activated, because you could have the building office in there, and you could have something else specifically related to the residents there, and then you could have the living room portion there, and it wouldn't be something that anyone else in the community would interact with at all. So suddenly we've gone from what was to me a very exciting housing project as a gateway to a very important corridor to something that offers an important service to our seniors, but doesn't do the things that I was originally hoping would be activated at Livernois. So to me, I would be okay with doing senior if I was more convinced that the first floor was actually an activated space that the public would use and would contribute to our overall vision of Livernois. So Jordan, I don't know if you want to address that. I don't know if I've articulated that well, but that's just my sort of general concern about this project, and
Absolutely. And in fact, I am actually glad that you articulated it that way, because that's something that Justin and I lovingly roughed these guys up about in terms of preparing this for your consideration. And the way we look at it from a tactical perspective, when you balance the master plan and the opportunities presented here, we sort of look at this as essentially all it really costs the city is time. And it allows us to go through that process. And so this feedback kind of gives us that fuel, that ammunition to go into those planning commission hearings to talk about what are acceptable uses on that first floor and what is an acceptable arrangement. And one of the other benefits about this, if you remember throughout the journey of kind of dealing with the city-owned property and working through Paul throughout that journey, you'll recall that there's that privately owned property in between our two parcels that he has an option on. And so what Paul has committed to is exercising that option if given this avenue to site control. And so essentially what you have, at least from the staff perspective, is we see a runway where we can vet this out, and either this thing can be built in a way that is conducive to the vision for Livernois and has the activated street front, has the uses that we'd like to see down there, and has the format that is sort of commensurate with a gateway project on a mixed-use corridor, or the 90 days expires, and essentially then you have a piece of property that is solely owned by one party that will go onto the private market and can be developed by somebody with the wherewithal or the preference to do that kind of project. So we kind of looked at it as sort of pardon me if this is a little bit crass, but we kind of looked at it from the city's perspectives. We get to sort of the best of all worlds, in the sense that either this really knocks it out of the park and we can get through that process with Planning Commission, or we'll have a more strategically assembled piece of land that will end up on the private market and be developed in a way that's commensurate with that vision, if that's accurate. Yeah.
And to piggyback on what Jordan said, I would just like to say for the record, what we envision is not something of a traditional American house, Walton Wood type of design. What we had in mind was something much more contemporary, something that would be fitting of the aesthetics of what it is that that the city envisions for the entire corridor. So, with respect, and additionally with respect to the commercial space, everything is hypothetical at this point. Vertical integration and with respect to other type of businesses that can serve the facility is an option, but it's not the only option. So at this point, we would be more than willing to work with the city, to work with staff, and to work with Jordan to find a win-win type of situation with respect to the commercial space, so that we can maximize usage. So it serves a benefit in terms of accomplishing what the desire of the city is, as well as getting us what we need from a developer's perspective.
And I appreciate that. And I also appreciate your patience. I mean, I know this has been a long journey. And I also appreciate the fact that neither one of us owns the entire parcel. So
right.
We need to do
work
this
together.
And work together. This has got to be a dance that works for both of us.
Absolutely.
So I get that, and I do appreciate that.
Okay.
I guess my question, and I don't know if this is a question for Dan Christ or for Jordan, but once we sell the property, what have we lost the leverage to control? In my particular purview is the first floor level. What assurances do we have that, and what leverage do we have that still happens? There's nothing in the purchase agreement itself that guarantees
the reverter.
Is there, or
well, through the chair?
Let me just
Dan. As I understand it, the fact sheet that has been prepared by Arborwood of Ferndale represents the commitment of the proposed purchaser as it relates to the site, and it states a number of factors, which include a 76,000.
And is this mentioned in the purchase agreement? Is
not.
It? Okay.
It's my proposal that the council, should it decide to approve the purchase agreements, that it would amend the motion to incorporate this Arborwood of Ferndale fact sheet as being incorporated by reference and made a part of the purchase agreement, and that it would be these commitments set forth in this document would be the items that would need to go for Plan Commission and council's approval with respect to the special land use. He would have the 90 days as proposed by Jordan, additional due diligence period to find out whether the Plan Commission council's on board by it. If he were to satisfy himself with respect to the due diligence and close on the property, the commitment would be in this document, and the reverter provision would hold him to that scope of development of the 76,000 square foot structure with certain heights, 2,100 square foot commercial space, 27 to 29 parking. Those are, in summary form, the commitments that the developer would be making with respect to the development. And so the suggestion that if it didn't work in 90, it could go to somebody else, that's not exactly right. Any assignment, once it's closed,
there's no assignment.
This has to happen, or the city gets the property back. It can't, a different development authorized under the zoning ordinance would not be allowed.
Just to clarify, just to Dan's point, and I apologize if this isn't clear enough, or it should be written a different way. But under item 8 in the representations item, it's the third paragraph of the very thick reverter. So I apologize, it's pretty thick and dense, but I do reference the Arborwood of Ferndale concept.
All right.
Kind of focusing on the 76,000 square foot structure with the assisted living, 80 units, and at least 2,100 square feet of street level commercial space, and also requiring that a full site plan with color renderings has to be delivered to our department by December 1st, and therefore to be going to the Planning Commission that month. So that's sort of along those due diligence. Certainly, if there's a better way to put that or more thorough, that can obviously go in there.
So Dan, it does. Now that he points that out,
it does make reference to it.
Okay, it does make reference.
I think
it'd still be a good idea to
fact
include
sheet,
fact sheet
incorporating as part of the purchase agreement makes sense because it does have a little bit additional detail.
Agreed.
And so the issue, though, that the assemblage of the property under the purchaser, if it didn't happen in 90 days, somebody else would have control. That's limited by the scope of this development plan. The developer or some would have to do this absent additional approval from council.
Okay.
And if it didn't, it would revert back to the city.
I just have a question regarding in the motion, and probably just because I like to see things kind of line up. I'm seeing two different amounts here from the parcels, but it's actually a little more than 106,000. Is there any reason why we just have 100? I mean, why don't the numbers kind of add up? I mean, it's not that much more, but I mean,
You don't add.
No, but the math's wrong.
yeah, the math is wrong.
It is. Because it says a total of 106.
Yeah.
But it's 70, 57, and 36, 5, 76. So we didn't get the math right there. Right?
3, carry the 1.
It's actually 106, 5, 107.
What is it?
106, 633. It's off by $633.
Apologies. In the discussions, we rounded it off to the figure, but that's a fair point. So yes, absolutely, that should be adjusted. Yep.
So I'm definitely more comfortable with that plan being referenced in here. But Jordan, is there any, and this is not my expertise, and so I don't know to what leeway we have to do this, but even within the development plan that is referenced here, what you could end up with is a building office and a living room space and something else that, as to my other point. is it fair? Is it reasonable? Is it even, are there examples where that is further defined? Because that is clearly the space from this perspective that I'm talking about that I'm most concerned about. Are there other qualities or qualifications that can be added to that in a reasonable way that actually ensures space that is activated, if you will?
Well, we thought about that at the staff level, and we struggled to kind of come up with, and we're certainly open to whatever council thinks would be best, but we struggled to come up with something that sort of properly defined what would be acceptable without either being too limiting or sort of stepping beyond our ability to define uses. And so a lot of, admittedly, what staff would be leaning on here is the Planning Commission process, especially if this went in, whether for a variance or a PUD, especially to leverage those processes to ensure that we got a little bit more refined in terms of what those uses would be.
I have a follow-up question. So you are looking for an assisted living partner to help manage, right, the center. You mentioned a couple providers who, around the area. And I was wondering how much of the architectural design of their building defines their brand, and how will we manage what the desire of an urban footprint is based off of these senior living centers. They look like they're suburban, right? They're surrounded by parking lots in a suburban environment. They look like a resort hotel at Disney World. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit, how will you partner with a entity where their luxury refinement living brand is defined by their architecture?
That's a great question. I've worked with Sunrise Assisted Living for a number of years, and you're absolutely correct. They have a model that, depending on where you're at, you can look at it and you can identify that it's Sunrise Assisted Living. But if you go to Chicago and you look at Sunrise on Lincoln, it does not look like senior living. It is a brick story. It has full front windows all along the street side. Unless you see the sign above the doorway that says Sunrise Assisted Living, it looks like an office building, looks like First Street Commercial, has residential above. It's similar to a lot of the national companies like McDonald's with the golden arches. Depending on the community, they have to change their model as far as from the corporate standard to if they want to be in the community. The Grosse Pointe Woods Senior Living, there's two facilities there. The one is all brick. So normally you don't see that. You see basically kind of the mansard roofs. You see all the gingerbread. And so the thing is that the most important thing for the operators is, does it function internally? Does it have everything that they're looking for as far as the internal layouts? And that's really what we're looking at, is doing that and developing the elevations as we go forth to basically make it a gateway building into Ferndale, but make it also work for the facility itself.
Okay. Great. But you don't know if Sunrise will be your partner or not. It could be another partner.
At this time, you really don't want to. It's like playing poker. If I show you all my cards as far as to these vendors, it's really hard to win. So right now what we're looking at is we think that Ferndale's a great place. We think it's a great location. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we get the best vendor for it.
So if this is adopted tonight, what's the rest of the process?
So if this is adopted tonight, part of their due diligence will be to pursue either a variance at the BZA or a planned unit development. But in either case, it's going to be a trip to Planning Commission and either a trip to the BZA or a trip back to City Council. So it'll have at least two layers where it'll be vetted, and then it'll most likely come back to you. I personally and we didn't make this a condition, personally I think the PUD process is cleaner and it allows for more of a sort of a more in-depth conversation about priorities. and it allows sort of the process to move. But BZA is technically an option, and so we'll be kind of guiding them through the process as staff. But essentially, you're looking at approved site plan, and then possibly a trip back to City Council.
If it's a PUD.
Correct.
Actually, it requires special land use approval for assisted living, so it would have to come back to council.
Either way, it's coming.
Thank you. Apologies. Yes. Right. Yes. Yep.
Well, for discussion, I'd like to move that City Council resolves to approve the revised purchase agreement for the sale of 205 and 235 Livernois, City Parcel 25-33-482-052 and 25-33-482-035, respectively, for $70,057 and $36,576, respectively, totaling $106,633, which also, including the summary document of Arborwood of Ferndale as part of the purchase agreement, incorporated within the purchase agreement, and to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the purchase agreement and all associated instruments necessary to complete the sale.
Support.
So moved by Martin and supported by Leaks May. All right, now further discussion or questions? No worries.
Just from the staff perspective, if I may, just to recall, I don't know if I caught it in there, just to remember to modify the due diligence period in item 4 to 90 days.
Right, is that, so you'll put that in your motion, Dan?
Yeah, I'll accept that.
All right.
You just made your first amendment to a motion, Jordan.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, there's not much you can do to satisfy me that the first floor will be activated in a way that won't be an office or a living room.
Unfortunately, not at this phase.
Right. And where would that happen? At the Planning Commission?
Correct.
And is the sale of the property, is going to the Planning Commission contingent on the sale of the property?
Yes, it's part of the due diligence and Dan, if you want to help clarify.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't quite hear you. What was your
comment? Is the sale of the property a requirement to go into the Planning Commission to talk about a PUD or a variance or a...
Sale of the property is not, Your Honor, but control of the property would be. And so that can happen in a couple different ways, either through the purchase agreement as contemplated currently in the due diligence period. It could have taken the form of an option to allow the proposed developer to have control of the parcel prior to going to the Planning Commission. And I, on your earlier point, I think there is a certain level of control that council has as it relates to the consideration of whether to grant special land use approval after it goes to the Plan Commission, which may address, in the context of that review that council would have at some point in the future, to determine whether or not it wishes to grant special land use approval or not. And that might allow for the developer to further refine their plan, and it would be coming back here. But again, that review process is really separate under the draft purchase agreement, because that's the purchaser's due diligence period to try and get those approvals.
Right.
I guess I see this as it's a big first step, but it's a first step in a process that, as we communicate and express our concerns and move forward, we have the ability to make those influencing factors. So at the end of the day, it's a product we're all happy with. There's a couple,
and that's what I just want assurances that's true. That when this comes back and it doesn't have those assurances, that I can oppose it at that point, because we're looking at it for other grounds now. So now we're looking at it just strictly from the variance perspective, or et cetera, and you've lost your ability to modify that portion of the development. You know what I'm saying?
So to clarify, just that you would have an option. You have to it's either going to come back for special land use or PUD or both.
Right.
So you'll have that opportunity to the final approval is going to end with us in some capacity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
and my ability at that point is not confined to a specific This is what I'm looking at Dan.
Well,
to a
is.
specific thing only, and I have now given up because we're not doing a PUD where I know I would have that input, the ability to influence what happens in that part of the development.
Through the chair, the framework of the purchase agreement is identified in the exhibit document.
Yes.
Absent the developer and staff coming back to council saying, in light of further input, we wish to amend the purchase agreement.
Right.
Which is certainly an option, but otherwise, the framework in this attachment that's now part of the purchase agreement is the framework for the plan.
Right.
Now, it's a rough summary, but that's the framework.
Right.
Can I clarify though? I think can I put words in your mouth? If they feel that they didn't still meet those, that some of that can be ambiguous at the special land use. Let's say they don't come for PUD at special land use. Could they say no because they don't like what they're doing with the first floor?
Well,
is that a fair question? Is that what you might be asking?
Well, could you repeat it, please?
Just that if is the avenue, let's just say that what they come back with is not exactly what we were comfortable with. If it comes only back for special land use, do you have the ability to say no because you don't like what they're doing to that first floor?
Right.
Or does it have to be?
It still requires special land use approval. I mean, there could be a particular plan that meets the letter of this development, which is still maybe the Plan Commission or Council finds objectionable such that they wouldn't give the special land use approval. That's why Jordan has suggested the additional time period for the developer or the purchaser to proceed forward expeditiously with getting it in front of the Plan Commission to make sure that the Plan Commission and Council hopefully would be on board with the plan.
If I may, through the chair, I think what we're really talking about here is form over function, and that the form of the building needs to be part of building the activation of the street, and most people who are doing commercial retail want the flexibility to put retail in there. It comes and goes, right? You can't guarantee that the retail in there is always going to be retail or commercial space. And so for me, my concern is the massing of this building. It looks somewhat suburban. I was more excited by your other 8 North because it came right up to the sidewalk and didn't have this sort of drop-off entryway, vehicle tunnel, which goes back to function. And so that's kind of where I'm concerned about, right? Mm-hmm. If it's their office space, I'm fine with that. It's commercial, but if the building doesn't meet the criteria of our zoning and this massing, concept doesn't give me confidence that it's going to, because it's a senior living assisted center and their needs are different from what we're looking for that space. I don't know, that's sort of my opinion now, but the Planning Commission, if we move forward with this process, would have to figure that out, but we could still end up with something coming to council for approval, right?
I guess I'm hearing it's going to come back here either way.
The only thing I would add to is we do not have, I'm saying this as politely as I can, we do not have a planning commission that is afraid of details like that and delving into those details.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I know.
I'm not saying your point is invalid. I'm just saying
I
can see the planning commission ripping into that. Yeah.
Developers also aren't interested if they get, somewhat lucrative go ahead or, lukewarm go ahead, that they're going to invest this time and money and then it still could be shut down. So, but that's the risk any developer takes, I guess. That's why you're a developer. So, and option B is we deny this and it goes back to private sale, right?
Right. Essentially, the alternative, let's say whether you deny it tonight or we don't arrive at a situation where either the Planning Commission and or the City Council felt like this proposal meets the spirit or merits special land use. Essentially, what it would sort of fall to a strategic plan goal, which one of our tasks under CED is development strategies for all city-owned property. So essentially, we would gear this up for an RFP. So we would kind of strategize and package it. We'd work, being an RRC community, we'd work with the MEDC.
Except that we don't own all the parcels. So
that's correct.
So
it does create a challenge.
Project with just
correct.
our parcels, right?
That's correct.
I mean, is there much bigger than a single-family house that you could put on the 2 parcels that we own?
I wouldn't feel comfortable saying off the top of my head, but just in experience and looking at some of our other parcels, the 2 pieces that we would have independently, which are kind of cut in half by the private parcel, it would make it challenging. We would still push forward and go for what we could, but I imagine that person in the middle would become very popular. As Paul
I do go back to, it's best if we could do this together. I do get that.
Yeah.
It would not be my first choice
with a giant walkway over the
to RFP these two when it makes so much sense to have these together.
And the fact that you're still here after 2 years.
Right. On the other hand, so this is a dance. On the other hand, I'd personally like to see the dance go on another couple weeks and you show me something that gave me more confidence that this was going to activate the street. So I'm not ready to approve this evening myself because this does feel, since we do have the development plan in here, this feels to me like the time when I ought to weigh in on what that is. And I am not 100% comfortable with that. So we can dance for a couple more weeks and try to refine that, or come back and then say we couldn't do it, or but that would be my preference if that's possible.
If I may,
Yes.
I've been kind of quiet, but I'm not comfortable approving the sale of the project tonight because all the critical partners and parties aren't identified. In my mind, based on my conversations with seniors, I don't think this is the best location for this type of facility. However, or I should say, and a first-rate company that would run the facility and determine if this location would work isn't present. There are many companies out there, and I don't want us to get stuck with like a third-rate company running this facility in Ferndale. So I'm not going to be comfortable supporting it until all the parties are present.
Just as an example, the church on Woodward presented their development with an actual partner.
Mm-hmm.
So just in comparison.
The only point that I'll point out with that is that the St. James group did have site control. And so one thing that the developers did allude to, and part of this dance, and sort of, and it's not necessarily.
No, I get that. That's a big
Yeah.
difference here.
And you can't hook
I
a
get
partner
it.
if you don't have site control.
Right.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I get it.
And we have no leverage to do this if to your analogy, and I'm not saying this is a Class C, but a Class A by ourselves, because we don't control all 3 parcels. So the best we could do is a couple of more houses or something. I don't know what else could be on there. But so that I totally get that this is a very different situation than St. James or some of the others.
Yeah, and when, yes, and I'm also very cognizant of if we wanted it more central to our downtown, your cost per square foot goes up, so your cost per unit goes up and may push you out of the market range, right? And there, there is, but not really.
So can we just make sure
own
that
the Withington lots?
That's
I mean,
true.
there's other public land, but I don't think we're ready to even entertain that for a while.
No.
So I'm just saying.
Can I just clarify for the developer and for Jordan what expectations are when they come back the next time with us? Is you want to see more of what the plans are for the first floor? That's it. The activation, right? Correct.
I'm speaking for myself.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
my main concern. I don't love the fact that it's a senior facility in this location. I love the fact that we're doing senior housing, but I can live with that if the first level is more consistent with our overall objectives for that lower end of the Livernois corridor.
Is there any other things that council would like to see back when they come back for the next
Well, they
floor?
won't be going to the planning commission in that 90 days, right? Is it 90 days or?
No, I think you're asking for to to table it
Table it,
until the
okay.
next
Well, that was
time. That's
my
your
suggestion.
suggestion. Okay, I just
I don't know
want
if there's support, but that's
I got
my-
it. Okay.
that was
I
would
would
satisfy me.
I would support that to give you guys a little bit more time to tweak this for.
And maybe we should ask you if that's something you even want to do. I mean, I don't want to be presumptuous, if that's even possible. I'm not a developer, so I don't know the specifics of what that looks like. I'm just telling you what my gut tells me, which is I want to see some assurances of what that space is going to look like.
Well, to answer your question, with respect to the council, if it would make life a lot easier if we were to be granted site control this evening, especially because given the fact that this is an issue of public record, anyone can see this video up to and including potential development partners. So knowing that there's potential pushback or there's a possibility that this may not come to fruition puts me again at a position where, I've lost some leverage. At this point, the only leverage that I really have at this point with potential developer partners or vendors is the fact that we control the land. And being able to control the land is essentially what allows this thing to happen, to begin with. So it is a chicken or the egg type of situation. With respect to your concerns, we have no problems working with planning, working with city to address any potential concerns. Ralph is a phenomenal urban designer. Our architects are top of the line. They have experience. I would say off the top of my head, I don't know if you're familiar with the All Seasons in Birmingham, right there at Maple, just west of Woodward. That is what most would consider to be a contemporary type of mixed-use facility. You're talking about the higher first floor. You have the street activation. You have, top-of-the-line materials, and it's literally right there. That's not necessarily consistent with the all-season design. But given the fact that mandates were given from the community, from Birmingham, okay, this is what we want to see. The developers went out and they did that. So we would be comfortable with doing that as well. It's a and given the fact that we have 90 days to basically bring something back. We listened to the notes, and Councilman Martin can attest to this. We listened to the notes that were given, and in terms of what the city wants to see, and we go back and we deliver that, and that's kind of where we are at this moment.
But I want to be clear because there's, as you pointed out, there's form and then there's function. So
right.
When you're talking about how it looks, that's one thing. My main concern is more the function of the first floor. So. You're not going to satisfy that just simply by saying we'll design this to look different.
Okay.
I don't know what that looks like because I'm not in this business, but if there's language or examples that can be in there that narrow the uses or the function of the ground level, that's what I'm looking for. And I'm saying right now, if that doesn't exist, if that's not possible, if it's a waste of time, in your opinion, to spend 2 weeks doing that, let me know. But that's what I would hope to see.
If I might ask the chair, excuse me.
Yeah.
If I might ask the chair, do you have anything in mind? What comes to mind when you say, okay, this is what I would like to see, this is what I envision? Do you have anything specific that you can articulate?
Well, if I may, I'd like to add, it looks like there's parking and a drop-off in front, which that's what your mat, right?
I'm sorry. The original plan that you have before you was not the when we went to the Planning Commission, they had some great ideas, and they really did. We tried to accomplish those. We didn't know that the city was changing their parking as far as the bike lanes. So it wasn't until after we met with Justin that bike lanes will be going along there. So those parking spaces are not going to be there. That's going to be green space. We have trees. We'll have the parking, and then, the bike lanes, and then there's parking actually out in the street. So it's protected bike lanes. There's a lot of things that we did from the original concept. We had an area for the dumpster that was basically a cut through as far as a curb cut, and that was removed and put in the back. There's 15-foot space along 3 sides of the building for basically building code so that we can have lighting there. We also moved the building closer to the street frontage and going up and keeping it lower in the back, further away from the neighborhood, even though we have the deeper blocks there. So it's, again, that was one meeting, one conversation, a lot of great ideas. So we're going to be taking all that back as far as, and both of you are correct, Mayor and Council Member. It is form and it is function. As a planner, we can try our best to try to create a market, but the market, developers react to the market. We don't create it. The All Seasons in Birmingham, the Planning Commission required them to have commercial on the first floor on Maple. They have it. What they have on the first floor in commercial is basically office space for individuals that are residing there that want their own little office, so they can leave their spouse upstairs in their suite, and they can come down and they can conduct their meetings and doing that. It's not an active first floor, but it met the conditions that it was commercial. Sunrise, when they proposed their second facility, it didn't get built in Rochester, city of Rochester. That was going to be activated. They had a bistro that was going to be activated on the first floor on the plans that they had, and that did not look anything like the one that's only 2 blocks away. It was basically almost a 5-story high building. So the thing is that we have to look at what we heard from the Planning Commission. They did not want a suburban model. So we're looking at that as far as the form of the building and the shape of the building, and as far as the roof and all those things. So we have to go back and look at that first floor activation as far as what does that look like, as far as the windows, the openings, the spaces that can be utilized basically for commercial use and activated. So, sorry, I'm losing my voice.
Yeah, I understand that. I think what I'm hearing, though, that what council may be asking for might be different from what Planning Commission direction is giving you. Is that a true statement?
I think that's true, and while I respect both of what you guys are saying, I don't know that I totally agree with you at this point. I mean, I'm ready to support this tonight. The issue that I have with it, and I think they're all very valid points, but I take the longer view with this in the process of it. There are certain contingencies the developer needs to move forward. We have ample opportunity to weigh in after this in the process, and at the end of the day, I think the market is going to determine what retail goes in there, and if we do our job with the activation of Livernois, of course it's going to attract the kind of things that we want to. There's always the possibility it won't, but that's a risk that we take. That we've got risk in this too, as the developer does. And who's to say 20 years from now what that area looks like? If we do our jobs right, it's active, vibrant, and what we think it will do. I get uncomfortable dictating, and I don't think you're going this far to say I want a Sam's Deli in there.
Right.
You know, and that's a role of government thing I get uncomfortable about. But I think you're all making great points. I just see us being able to manage that through the process that we've got. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think part of my issue is that I loved your first 8 North concept. It was right on, and I'm not seeing some of that come through here. And so I would just give, design, think critically about that. I know it's a very different type of living area, and since I know and have had firsthand experience with assisted living facilities, I kind of understand how you access them and ease of access and all of that. So I get it. And I love that it's senior assisted living. I just hope that it's, we're coming up with what defines affordable, and $2,500 to $5,100 a month isn't an affordable. And if it looks like a Birmingham, European villa or a Disney World resort, that's not going to fit the context of Ferndale whatsoever. So you'll need to negotiate that with whomever partner you get with.
Well, we do have a motion and a second.
But we still have the option to table it, depending upon the preference of this body. If we think it will be productive time and not too detrimental to the project itself, I won't throw a fit about tabling it by any means either. But if we did do a vote, I would vote yes.
I'm not sure what we've set clear expectations about what they would come back with that would be different than going through this exploratory process. I think they're pretty clear about our hesitations and what we're looking for, and it right? It will come back to council, but it still has to be vetted through the planning commission, which seems like there's a difference of opinion what that should be. So maybe there needs to be some offline discussions
I think that'd be helpful.
about how to make this meet. Because at the end of the day, we do need more senior living. I mean, we're underserved in our region with this type of housing, so.
The one thing, just as an observation from the staff perspective, and obviously I think staff is prepared to, there's a future for this regardless of how you vote tonight in terms of where it can go. One of the things that we looked at as staff and we talked about with the developers is the level of detail, investment in drawings and plan preparation to prepare before even going through the planning commission process is and I don't want to necessarily speak for the developer, but it's sort of not worth the while to invest at this point if there's not the assurance that, hey, this concept in general is worthy of that further vetting. And I think that's sort of and just to, bless you, Joe, and just to clarify, and again, not to speak for the developer if I'm out of turn, but essentially approving this tonight says this is worth going through that process further, knowing that at the end of the day, you'll have the ultimate authority as council, regardless of which path, and Dan, Chris, if I'm misrepresenting that, please obviously correct me, but you'll ultimately be able to say either this is the vision that we want or it is not. And I think that what the developers, just to sort of clarify their ask, as I understand it, is voting voting for this purchase agreement that's conditional, that gives them that 90 days. They can then take this in hand and say to their partners that, hey, we've got tentative site control. If you that sort of starts the dominoes falling of they'll sign on the dotted line, then all of a sudden that starts showing up in site plans and planning commission, et cetera. And so that when it gets to you at council, my thought is it will have the level of detail that I think I'm hearing you ask for, is who's involved in this project, what is this thing going to look like, what's going to go on the first floor. All of those things will be at you when it arrives. That being said, we're ready to proceed however you vote tonight to get it to that point.
I think this is kind of what I'm picking up. Now, when you keep saying that this going through approval tonight, the developers would have control, I think that's the kind of the operative word here. That, I mean, I don't think we want to be in a situation where we are stuck with what the developers are going to propose because they do have control. I think we want some say, and I agree with you, Mayor. This is the location. I mean, I love senior housing, and we do need more of it. But I do see that area, that corridor, being one in which the community could use also. So, knowing, I guess it's just not knowing. You know what I mean? Right. It's not knowing, and that word that you keep saying, that control, just kind of just is ringing in my.
And that's fair. And to clarify, it's more. It's probably more accurate to say it's an option on the property. It's as if, if you're hunting for a house, you put an option on that, which sort of lets you move further down the process. So in the sense of its control over its fate, ultimately that rests with this body, council. This essentially gives them, it's more accurate to say, it gives them an option on the property, which then gives them additional ability to ink deals with prospective tenants. It's sort of it's a necessary domino in the real estate process. So it's not necessarily control over the destiny of the project. That rests with council and planning commission across the process. I apologize if that wasn't clear. This is essentially giving them the option to proceed.
You will have this before you sign on the dotted line. Council will have had a final review and is allowed to decline at that time.
At what
because
point?
They need to have special land use and or a PUD. So either way, it has to come back for council for final approval.
Which essentially you leave them at the altar to continue the analysis.
Okay.
And you can I want to clarify. I think there's
in-laws?
to clarify. You can deny if for any reason that doesn't fit with what council wants this property to look like.
Right.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Well, we do have a motion. So, Marnie, why don't you call the roll?
Council members Leaks May,
Yes.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Councilmember Polika,
No.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
No. So the item is passed. I guess we'll see you back here. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, that is. Thought we were going to have a quick night, didn't we?
It was looking like it.
But that is the end of our regular agenda. So now we're going to move on to call to council. Captain Palazzolo, you're representing the police department. Anything for the good of the community this evening, sir? All right. Jenny, one last time. Nothing. All right. Lisa is here, right? Yeah. Anything from the recreation department this evening? I'm not putting you on the spot. If no is an acceptable answer, as Vinny and Jenny have shown you. Nick, I'll put you on the same spot, but same. You're going to stick with no.
Pure pressure.
Sullivan, show them how it's done, man. Anything for the good of the community from the fire department, Chief?
Mayor, council update on our fleet. We just got the inspector's vehicle back, which is a repurposed police SUV. It was taken offline. It's all set to go, and we'll be having that out there with light sirens. It's all ready and safe. And the new $567,000 engine will be arriving either tomorrow or Wednesday. It's en route. Ooh. So it goes to the dealership first, and then from there we have to send it in to the graphics place. So we're going to get a picture to Kara once it's in the state. I took Fire Marshal Banton and Lieutenant Light out, and we did a final inspection on it last week for a day, and everything's looking good. Now we just get it in here and get her all set up.
Through the chair, when can we see it? You want to bring it to a council meeting?
Yeah, as soon as all the stickers are on it, it's just a big red and white truck, and it's a very big truck.
Don't forget the Ferndale F.
But not too big to fit in the building, right?
Kara, I'll defer to Kara. We've got that all designed in.
All right. Not too big to fit in the firehouse.
No, sir.
All right.
But it'll probably have to go where we raise the doors.
Right, I'm sure. I'm sure. But we've learned that lesson. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief. We're looking forward to it. Now, finance is always an area with lots of interesting stuff going on. But not tonight. All right. Kara, anything from communications and community engagement?
Good evening. I didn't have anything, but as we are sitting in the meeting and rain is coming down and we're hearing reports of what's going on. So far, it sounds great in Ferndale. We haven't had any reports either to us or on social media about flooded basements. But just in case, I'm going to go ahead and reshare all of the contact information for DTE, for what constitutes an emergency, 911, for who to call if something does flood. That's going to be on our website, and it's going to be on our Facebook page within the next 10 minutes. So if anybody has questions, they can go there for the information.
Thank you. Very good. Joe, anything from the Assistant City Manager's office this evening?
Naturally, it's about parking. We do have a 4-day weekend, which means it's Labor Day, and we will be signing all the pay stations.
Outstanding. Thank you.
We'll be getting a jump start Saturday evening at 2 a.m., right, Kevin? We will be signing no parking enforced during the Labor Day holiday, and we will have signage out there letting people know.
Excellent. Yep. Can I ask you a parking question?
Yep.
So when you use the machines now, they're not called machines, right? The kiosks. The kiosks, the stations now. One of the questions is, do you have a coupon? How often do we use coupons? I only remember of one time when we did that, but maybe it's a more regular feature and I'm not aware of it. And if we don't use it that often, how hard would it be to just take that off there? Because it just adds another step, and it's not a criticism. I'm just curious because
Yeah, we added that last summer when we ran a special promotion for businesses to validate parking for some of their customers.
We did, yes.
We did not get as much interest from the business community, so it's a simple operation to remove that. We can definitely pull the DDA and some of the businesses to see if there's any interest in keeping that in there, and I can work with Republic on whether I can confirm whether there is any use of it, and if there is no use, we can certainly minimize the steps for sure.
Just asking. Don't do it for my account, but it is an extra step, and it just feels like one that's not necessary anymore.
Agree.
So
I think it's a great point.
So just if you'd look into it. Thank you.
We will look into it. Yep.
That'd be great. Thanks. Marnie, anything from the city clerk's office?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. April, for the city manager.
Just a friendly reminder, due to the September Labor Day holiday, that City Hall will be closed on Monday and will reopen on Tuesday morning.
Sweet. Dan Christ.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
All right. Councilman Martin.
Nothing other than I just want to wish Jenny well. I appreciate you putting up with my nitpicky questions over the last 6 years, especially around health clinics and such. So I think it's ironic where you go, but you've done a great job here, and I really do appreciate your patience with me. Thank you.
And the same thing, Jenny. I thank you for the couple of years that I did know you, and all of your help that you've given me personally. And I'm really glad that you're going to be in another area, but still working with the community. So I appreciate it, everything you've done, and I wish you well.
Thank you. Councilman Pollica.
Just to wish Jenny a wonderful move forward.
Well, Jenny, I couldn't have passed paid parental leave without you. Ferndale thanks you, and our employees thank you. I think Joe thanks you. Actually, I couldn't do it without you or April. So having the Power Woman trifecta on that policy was special to me, and I certainly will miss you and your HR advice throughout the years. So, good luck.
All right. Same thing, Jenny. Really, thank you. It's HR is one of these sort of back of the house functions that maybe the public doesn't always understand, but we have certainly seen the value of your work, and we thank you very much. Good luck.
Transformative.
And that's it. So with that, our meeting is adjourned.